like a Methodist
Gotcha.
hierarchy
We're live right now,
organization. Okay. I guess I should probably put the headphones on.
No, yeah, I mean, we're not on the radio yet. We got a couple minutes, but we're live
Okay.
on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, I always wanted that. So they would have a different.
So you're basically hired by the state. You just kind of figure out where you want to go, and you put in the application process.
So the state would determine.
Yeah.
Hey, let's move you from this city to that. We have a need
Right.
in this city, so now go
Right.
there.
So minister would typically start off in a smaller community,
Right.
and then with age, et cetera, you might progress to larger communities. So my dad wound up being what they call the district superintendent. So he was responsible, at one point for Northwest Iowa, and then he moved down to Des Moines, which is the capital. So he was the district superintendent for the greater Des Moines area, which brings a whole nother level of organization and responsibility.
Sure, yeah.
Beyond just dealing with the churches, and you get to deal with the church-run senior housing communities and social service programs,
yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
I'm John Campbell, CNBC.
Okay, time to check
Ready for mic checks, Jerry?
check our Fisher Price mics.
You
Here
got
we
it.
Okay.
You got it. Can't get them at Toys R Us anymore. All right, test.
Can you hear me? Ready? Okay, this is Dean Peckham calling.
Okay.
Okay.
5 minutes. 22 seconds.
Okay.
But Iowa winter snow, it's different than
Well, and it
lake stuff when
varies.
you get it from Michigan.
Well, yeah,
right?
and it really varies because of where Iowa sits. It catches a lot of the Arctic stuff that comes out of Alaska across the plains of the Dakotas, and will hit northwestern Iowa. Plus, you catch a lot of stuff blowing up the Mississippi,
Okay.
so you get that effect.
Right.
And then, but you don't really get the lake effect, of Wisconsin or Michigan
Yeah.
or Chicago, for example.
Right,
But,
yeah.
I had one of my friends that I used to work with was from Missouri, in the area that they call Tornado Alley,
yeah.
which gets hit every summer. And and she would show me these the weather patterns where everything just kind of comes up, where the Missouri and the Mississippi hit, and then the wet winds push down from the north, and it just creates this vortex right there. In the town that she lived in, when was this? Maybe 10 years ago. It was town of about 50,000 that was pretty much wiped off the map.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know. And it's just,
Did Iowa have-
people complain about, and Iowa's not as bad. Now, when I was a kid, we moved into Charles City, which was up in northeast Iowa. And so back in the late 60s, a tornado came right down through the middle of town and just cleaned it out. Killed about 13 people.
Wow.
So people were understandably pretty paranoid
Sure,
when there was
yeah.
a tornado warning.
Yeah.
They were jumping and running for the basements.
Yeah.
But the funny thing was, my dad was sent there because there were two Methodist churches, and the church said, the state said, bring them together to create one larger church. And so, these two churches, for a while we were meeting while we were there, we were meeting in a middle school auditorium for church services, and the church took over an old office building. But when the tornado came right down through the middle of town, right down Main Street, it hit every denomination but the Lutherans. And the Lutherans said, see, we're the chosen religion. You should follow us. It was just kind of a local joke around town,
yeah.
but it was pretty ironic.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So is that the only tornado you ever?
I never,
experience?
I've been through tornado warnings where, everybody runs for the basement.
Yeah.
but I've never actually had the experience of being in a tornado. You just, everybody's pretty darn cautious about it. And, it's why, one of the reasons why you have a basement,
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still to this day, it's still amazing, to realize that, probably 95% of the homes out here don't have a basement.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, well, where do you put all your junk? In your garage, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We got twins, and we don't have tornadoes to worry about generally.
No, and everybody's like, well, you've got fires. I said, the chance of a fire hitting us are pretty remote. Less than maybe out in a rural area or out in the forest.
Same
But
with-
I'd rather deal with the risk of fire
An
and drought.
earthquake.
Yeah, fire and earthquake than having to deal with
Every year tornado.
every year, because it's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh, yeah.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
But then, so are September fires in California, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who knew that it would wipe out 5 to 10% of Santa Rosa?
It's crazy.
One of my friends is trying to do a industrial project up in Colusa,
Uh-huh.
and he can't get PG&E out there until like midsummer, because all the PG&E lineman staff are over in Sonoma County
working
and
on
Napa
rebuilding
counties,
stuff over
rebuilding
there.
infrastructure. Right.
That's wild.
Ready?
A minute.
Okay.
That's wild. Whereabouts do you live?
Curtis Park,
Okay.
just right downtown. So I'm
Yeah. We're
5
in
minutes.
Rockland, so.
Oh, okay.
I
I'm
mean, it
5
is-
minutes away from here.
Nice.
So it's, for me, getting around downtown is always nice, but I'm such a procrastinator and then when I have to go out to like Rockland or
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
and I keep forgetting, oh yeah, there's traffic. It's just, it's
Yeah.
just planning that into the schedule,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I do make some trips up to Sierra College because they're a
Yeah,
collaborative partner
Yep.
up there.
Yep.
They have a really good manufacturing technology program.
absolutely.
They just built. They received a big grant
Right.
from the Haas Foundation,
Mm,
so they have a state-of-the-art facility.
nice. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers on Money 105.5 FM, part of the Wall Street Business Network. This is Mark Bellows. I am your host today, no co-host. I am a tax principal with Clifton Larson Allen, the 8th largest CPA firm now in the U.S., with an office here in Roseville and offices throughout the United States. I work with manufacturers and distributors and real estate developers, investors, contractors, that sort of thing. Tax planning, strategy, all that, and just finished up tax season. Which is nice. So it's nice to have a little bit of a breather, and now I can get into doing some strategy and planning and working with my clients on other things other than trying to get a tax return done, which is good. So the rest of the year is kind of enjoyable in that respect because you have other things to work on and can do some forward thinking. And I think the fact that I work with a lot of manufacturers and do a lot with manufacturing, it's a real important part of my business, and I lead the charge with our Clifton Larson Allen here in Sacramento and that. And CLA itself is real big into manufacturing, and we've got a lot of manufacturing clients, over 5,000 throughout our firm, and we've got a lot of people involved in various industries, and women in manufacturing, we're a big part of that, et cetera. So it's a real important part of what we do and what we believe in, and I think that and forward thinking really leads to our guest today, which is, I'd like to welcome Ms. Dean Peckham.
Thank you very
Dean.
much, Mark. Appreciate
Dean
it.
is now the Executive Director
Correct.
of the Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative.
Correct.
Yes, welcome to the show. Maybe get a little closer to the mic.
Okay,
There you go.
will do.
That's better.
Perfect.
So, Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative is fairly new.
Correct.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what it is and what the initiative is?
Okay, so Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative, as you noted, is very new. We just formally started organizing here in February of 2018. The organization is focused on the development of a local workforce to meet the needs of the 21st century advanced manufacturing by bringing together an alliance of manufacturers, educators, and industry partners with experience and knowledge to bring vocational programs and training opportunities into the region so that we can begin to fill the requirements for a skilled manufacturing workforce that addresses the current needs and trends in manufacturing, such as CNC machining, welding fabrication, mechanical assembly. So the work of SVMI will enable manufacturers to have access to a best-in-class dynamic workforce that provides our region with a pipeline of skilled labor and to help manufacturers reduce costs and confidently plan for the growth of their business.
Good. So that's there's a lot there.
That's a
And
mouthful.
We're going to
Right.
peel that onion throughout the course of the rest of the show
Please.
and really get into what we're doing and why there's a real need for it. And this show over the last couple of years, we've really talked about a lot in with different guests and different formats,
Right.
but the need for more and more people to work in manufacturing and how there's just a
Correct.
critical shortage in a lot of areas. And so we'll get into
Okay.
what you guys are doing with that, both from the educational front, working with the colleges and even the high schools.
Correct.
Local high schools are actually really developing some training programs, if you will. So I think that's real important to get into. I'm glad that's a big part of it. I know you said when we were talking earlier, there's 3 prongs, if you will.
Right.
And so we'll get into that some too. But maybe let's step back a little bit. Dean, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, what your background is, where you come from, professionally and all that.
Sure. Background in economic development, spent 25 years with the city of Sacramento, focused on areas around manufacturing, workforce development, entrepreneurialism, and over the course of my years with the city, had an opportunity, like you, to work with a lot of manufacturers in the region, help them either relocate to Sacramento to grow, to start up, as nascent businesses themselves. And so the nexus of manufacturing and workforce development, which is the focus of SVMI, is just a logical progression for me.
Sure.
And so this was a great opportunity to engage with the manufacturers and workforce development partners in the region and the education community as well.
Okay. And those on Facebook Live that were watching us before the show started, we were talking about Iowa because
Correct.
you're originally from Iowa. You grew up in that area.
Yeah. So, I grew up, my dad was a minister, but that's another side story. But living in Iowa and growing up in rural communities, and it's very agricultural based.
Yes.
Even ag-related manufacturing was very important. And even my brother-in-law actually works for John Deere as a quality assurance manager in Waterloo, which is one of their 2 big domestic plants.
Right.
And so, manufacturing has always been very close to me personally,
Sure.
having personal relationships, friends, and family involved in the industry.
Great. Well, then you came out to California at some point and worked with the city of Sacramento, and was good for you?
Yeah, it's a very good experience. In a large city, you do get to touch a lot of different industry along
Sure.
the way. The fun, just as I was retiring, and as everybody who's been around Sacramento for a few years knows, the microbrewery industry took off in this region,
Oh, yeah.
and we had a number of new breweries that popped up, and so I had a great opportunity to work with those manufacturers. They're extremely hardworking entrepreneurs who have built those businesses from the ground up, and literally living in the plant and building it themselves to get it off the ground. I mean, really bootstrapping their businesses. But it's been really rewarding to maintain those relationships and to talk to them and see how their businesses are growing. One of the stellar manufacturing microbreweries around here, which is New Glory, they're already looking at an expansion, that would tenfold their brewing capacity
Wow,
in the
that's
region.
great.
So
That's great. Yeah,
that's another food related manufacturing,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
is a very big industry in this region as well.
Oh, yeah.
We are surrounded by agriculture, but we also have a lot of food processors involved, up the Central Valley from Butte County all the way down the Central Valley
Oh, yeah.
to Bakersfield.
Yep. And so, so Sacramento has had an issue, a challenge, if you will, of becoming more than just a government town. for a long time. I moved up
Yes.
here in '91.
Correct.
My career took me up here in '91, and since then it's always been. I mean, I've seen it. The effort is trying to get it to become more than known as more, but actually do more than just be the government town.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience coming out when the last recession hit California.
Yeah.
Sacramento specifically, the state of California wasn't hiring. We had furlough Fridays, as
Oh,
you
I
might
remember that.
recall.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the equivalent of losing 50,000 jobs in Sacramento.
Right.
So I don't know if anybody goes back to the early 90s and remembers when McClellan, Mather, and the Sacramento
yeah.
Army Depot closed.
Yes.
I think we lost roughly 15,000 employees at that point.
Wow.
So when we went through that recession,
We're going to go to commercial break. Sorry.
Okay.
We'll go to commercial break. When we come back, we'll finish up that and then get some more into the
Okay.
Sac Valley Manufacturing Initiative. We're talking to Dean Peckham today, the executive director of the newly formed Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative. We'll be right back.
Okay.
So Jerry will give me hand signals when there's with minutes left.
Okay.
So,
Okay,
I
what's
didn't
the
tell you
commercial
before.
break?
Well, he'll give me a number of minutes.
Three,
so when
two.
I'm through, that's how many minutes are left.
Oh, okay.
And so when
Got
it's a
it.
minute left, then we can figure we got a few minutes, and he'll.
Okay. Okay, got it. I didn't even pay attention.
Yeah. No worries. I didn't tell you so. God, that's right. Was that early '90s when they closed all these? Huh?
Yeah, early 90s.
Yeah.
So we were involved. So, that was. Yeah, so the Army Depot was in the city.
Right.
And so we were directly involved in going through in the reuse
That was
process for
sweet.
the Army Depot.
Is that
My
still-
friends were over at the county were deeply involved in McClellan and Mather.
Sure.
And Larry Kelly came in and took over McClellan.
Yeah.
I'm not sure kind of how that McEwen Properties took over Mather.
Right.
And then remember Packard Bell?
Yep.
Packard Bell took over the Army Depot at that point.
We're back.
Okay.
We're back. You listen to Beyond the Numbers on my 105.5 FM. Mark Bellows here with my guest today, Dean Peckham, and we were right before the break. We were talking about because Dean was spent a number of years, a couple decades, as the economic development director at the city of Sacramento, and we talked about I led into how Sacramento is changing. It's had to change from being just a pure state government town to a lot more. And so we were mentioning in the early 90s when everything, the army bases and that type of stuff, military bases closed.
Mm-hmm.
It really led to some increased workforce that was looking for jobs.
Right. So if we pop forward to 2009 through 2014 with the recession, Sacramento was hit extremely hard with the decline of the construction industry, the real estate industry, and all those related ancillary industries, professional services, but also the government. And there was a recognition on the part of the region that we needed a broader regional economic development strategy that kind of looked at the industry clusters in this region and then also looked at how we can, and part of that was learning how we can diversify our regional economy. So out of that came Sacramento region economic development strategy, which identified manufacturing as one of those clusters, as well as IT professional services, healthcare, which obviously plays a very big role in this community. But there was also a need that we needed to embrace entrepreneurialism because of our over-reliance on construction, real estate,
Right.
and government. So there were a lot of initiatives in this region around supporting entrepreneurialism, led by our Regional Workforce Development Board partners and the state of California. So it's all been a very natural symbiosis with also a recognition that we needed to promote manufacturing. The average manufacturing worker is in this region is making about $60,000 compared to, let's say, a service level retail job which is part-time and may only be making, $10 to $15 an hour.
Right.
And the great thing about manufacturing is that an employee can work their way through an organization, through their initiative, through their desire for continued education. And you can do this, and an individual who wants to get into manufacturing can do this and create a very good living wage for themselves and their family through just a 2-year education.
Right.
And so, there is right now at the statewide, at the California Community College level, the Strong Workforce Initiative, which is really focused on developing middle skills positions. States committed, $200 million a year to support that. So what you're seeing across the state and at each community college or community college district will focus on those industries in their region. So in this region, we are seeing a lot of emphasis on building the curriculum around advanced manufacturing. As you know, Sierra College already has a robust manufacturing technology program. So does Yuba College, but you're also seeing new programs that are either growing or expanding at American River College, Woodland College, as well as American River College.
Right. And I think Sacramento is really well positioned for, it's got a strong distribution network in place.
Correct.
Possibly anyway because of ag, right? So we've got the Port of Sacramento and West Sac, I should say, and then you've got access to the ports on San Francisco and Oakland. You've got the rail that comes through here. You've got, you can jump on Highway 5 up and down the state and 80 across the country. So, it's a natural place for manufacturing to really take hold and to build things here and then distribute them out to Sacramento.
Yes,
So
we do have a good network.
Yeah.
And as time progresses with as the economy matures, hopefully we'll see Metro Air Park develop. Amazon just opened out there, but they sitting right there, basically at the crossroads of the two freeways with access to the airports, that area can develop into a manufacturing hub that moves north either up Highway 99 or along the I-5 corridor as well.
Yeah. So speaking of education, and you said there's three, I said prongs, but three focuses of the SVMI, right?
Right.
Which are, remind us again what the three are.
Sure. So, as we noted at the beginning, the group is really focused on increasing collaboration with the education community at the high school, community college level, so that we can train students for careers in manufacturing, teaching them relevant skills, and then progressing through their educational career. So 3 prongs include educator manufacturer forums, which we're hosting coming up in May, where we're going to meet with the school district administrators, elected board members, talk to them about the necessary skills in manufacturing, what the manufacturing environment actually looks like. We're going to be taking them on tours of manufacturers in their community.
Excellent. Yeah.
And then we'll finish those discussions and tours by viewing the new Sierra College Haas Manufacturing Technology Center at Sierra College, so they can really get an idea of the continuum of education for their students and then have a better appreciation of the opportunities as well.
Right.
And then beyond the manufacturer educator forums, we're going to be implementing this summer the Train the Trainer program, where we will take teachers from the high schools and put them in the manufacturing environment for what we're calling externships, where they can enhance their skills around modern manufacturing, take that back to their school so they can educate and inform their students as well as their fellow teachers. And then this fall in October we'll have our National Manufacturing Week, so we'll be facilitating a series of plant tours for high school and community college students, and then that will culminate in a job fair for the manufacturers at the end of the week. So those are the 3 primary initiatives that we have on board for this year.
And so one of the things, and again, this is what I was alluding to earlier, last segment, about one of the things that we talked on this show a lot about over the years is that so often there's such a big push on students, go get your college degree, and then get a job after you get your bachelor's. Well, get your bachelor's. Everyone should go to college and get their
Correct.
bachelor's.
Yes, even my daughter was a product of that experience as well.
And so I think that is appropriate in some situations, but there are a lot of situations where the student doesn't want to go get a bachelor's, may not be the best plan for them. It's not really what they want to do, and so there's got to be other alternatives for some. And one of the alternatives would be this learning about the manufacturing industry. And so,
Right.
and starting at the high school level. And I know there's a couple high schools that are involved at this
Right.
point, right? What high schools are those?
So in this region, we have Florin High School.
Okay.
They have a nascent relationship that's developing with Siemens, the light rail manufacturer.
Yep.
Siemens is on a growth mode these days. I think they have 1,100 employees right now. They're installing a new 2.2 megawatt solar substation there.
Right.
So there's Florin, there's Laguna Creek High School, Roseville, Rockland, Oak Ridge, Colfax.
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that Folsom High School is developing a new manufacturing technology program for next year. And also Kennedy High School has a very good program. And so Kennedy and Sac City College are working through a relationship where actually Sac City can utilize the Kennedy High School infrastructure as well.
Okay. Well, I remember when as a kid growing up, and I went to high school in the early '80s in the San Diego area, but I think we had a metal shop and an auto shop, maybe wood shop, maybe all three.
Correct.
And it was, you did some
Yeah,
stuff there.
the old industrial arts programs, as we
and
used
then
to
those
call
kind
them.
of faded out of way for a while.
Yeah.
But again, I think that was kind of time with everyone's focus. Get everyone to get a bachelor's degree. Everyone should go to college. Well, I'm glad to see that in some places that's coming. Those kind of classes of industrial arts and that stuff's coming back. And then the stuff that you're talking about at these high schools is, in a lot of cases, is very high tech. It's training these students to be CNC machinists, ultimately,
Right.
things like that, where they can go and work on, on a factory floor, in a factory shop, anywhere around. Very high tech, which in today's manufacturing things going towards.
Correct.
And these-
Automation and robotics.
and they're
is
all
the
being
way.
trained in that, so, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So they're going to be useful from the beginning. Not useful, but their skills are going to be useful from the very beginning.
Correct.
Which is
So, it's interesting as we have all heard as parents, and it's been in the media, there's been this really push at the school level towards science, technology, engineering, and math.
STEM.
The STEM, and
Yeah.
some of us have expanded it because art is a part of it. And
STEAM.
STEAM. And manufacturing is no different. It
Yeah.
requires, a knowledge and understanding
Oh, yeah.
of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. As well as what's not quite emphasized enough, but it's also the soft skills
Mhm.
of how to work with people and how to show up to work on time, et
Right,
cetera,
right,
et cetera. So the idea, one of the initiatives behind, SVMI is getting the manufacturers to sit on the advisory boards of those high school manufacturing industrial arts programs so that they can play a role and influence the curriculum and make sure that it's relevant. And the schools want that collaboration, but they don't necessarily know who the manufacturers are in their region. So we see that as a major responsibility by us to really engage with those schools and play a leading role and create opportunities for plant tours for youth along the way.
Yeah, that's good. That's going to be really good just to show that for those students that are interested in it, here's a path for you.
Correct.
And like you said, the pay is good
Yes.
pay. So
Good pay.
Yeah.
I think the challenge for education has been having enough an awareness and enough career counselors.
Yeah.
And that can be at either the community college level, reaching down to the high schools, or even the high school career development counselors being aware of those middle skill career opportunities that are available through the community colleges with 2 years or less of education.
right, yeah. So that's part of the challenge is and I guess that kind of ties into the training the trainer, and maybe it's an ancillary to that. But in terms of teaching, the schools
Yeah.
consider.
And that's, and so that's the, part of the genesis of having the educator manufacturer forums is making those education leaders aware of these great opportunities out there
Right.
for, all of the students, not just the students that are, on the pathway to go to a 4-year university.
Right. Well, you and I met back in October. I think was the first time we met.
Correct.
At the forum that we had at downtown at the Sutter Club. So we're going to go to commercial in a minute. But when we come back from that, let's talk a little bit about that and why.
Please.
How that led to you guys, you being and everyone else is a part of the SVMI, kind of getting that going.
Okay.
So that was a what was that one called? Remind me the name of that event. Do you remember?
What did we call that event?
Well, what happened? What it is, and like I said, we're going to commercial, but they're in Chico. They developed this program, and we said, hey, people said, let's bring this down to Sacramento,
Correct.
introduce it to Sacramento, and start doing it in Sacramento. That's
Correct.
what we're talking about.
That's where we're going to go.
Yeah. So when we get back from the break, we'll continue that conversation. You listen to me on the numbers.
Thanks. Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put
That's
you on the
no,
spot.
that's okay.
That's
It was the
called-
North State Grow Manufacturing
Okay,
Initiative.
yeah, GMI. That's right.
GMI, yeah.
North State GMI. Yes. Okay. So, if people want to get involved in Train the Trainer, how would they do that? How do you identify who's going to be doing that?
So the best person to, at this point, it might be easiest if people just call me.
Okay.
Oh, it's cold in here, guys.
It's not too bad.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's hot outside, but-
I'm sweating. Yeah, the biggest problem doing anything in the state of California is the government. I mean, isn't it? That's the biggest thing. Permits, loopholes, paperwork, bureaucracy, everything like that.
There's
Those are the
there's-
people.
there are
Businesses are
initiatives.
leaving California.
It's
because of
not,
the government.
there was, through the early 2000s, 90s, 2000s, it was an issue, but a lot of them are kind of like reevaluating the value of, does it really make sense for us to move?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there that still have questions about how successful Tesla is going to be with that battery factory up in Reno.
Excuse me, I gotta get you guys back again.
Okay.
I mean, and this is completely off,
Yeah.
but, the state provided them with, big tax incentives to move there. They said they're going to train people. Are you actually going to be able to get people there and be able to provide that level of training that's necessary for that plant to meet their
I
goals?
always wonder how successful those initiatives are from the state level. I know that I've not followed up on any of those because
Right.
every state offers it, right? I know that what I've read over the years when states and cities offer big initiatives to sports teams is that typically the sports team is the winner and the state or city is not.
And the city is not.
Yeah.
And there have been so many documented stories.
Oh, yeah.
And
So I wonder if that's similar in some of these situations.
And I think
where-
Sacramento did a good job with the Kings, in structuring that financing program. The corollary to that one is there was no city capacity to do any additional financing for a MLS soccer stadium downtown. Just no financial. The city met its bonding capacity, so they couldn't do anything more.
Yeah.
So that's why the MLS has said, well, you need to find some people with some really big money. Now I'm not sure where that is, we'll leave that up to Kevin Nagel to find that money, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's the sports teams is a real interesting story
Yeah.
because there's so much passion that gets involved that people
huge.
lose when you're kind of looking at the financial bottom line. They just kind of lose it all.
Yeah.
City, but I think the city did a pretty good job there
Oh, I think
with
so.
the Golden One Center, and the city and our workforce development partners were also very involved. Working with the Kings and Turner Construction, who was their GC. recruiting companies to bid, but
Yeah.
also recruiting people to work. With any construction project.
We're back.
Okay, we're live. Okay.
We're back. You listen to Beyond the Numbers on Money 105.5 FM, part of the Wall Street Business Network. Mark Bellows here, a tax principal with Clifton Larson Allen. You can get a hold of me at 916-784-7800 or mark.bellows@claconnect.com. If you have any questions or want to talk about what Dean and I are talking about today, or other questions about tax or whatnot, please feel free to give me a call. And if you want to get a hold of Dean, who is the executive director of the newly formed Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative, Dean Peckham, the number is 916-508-0892. And you've got a website that's coming, but it's not up yet.
It's not official yet. We've reserved the website.
Okay.
We've purchased the domain name.
Excellent.
And we are literally, building the website as we speak.
So any questions you've got through anything we've talked about, call Dean, 916-508-0892. If you have questions about being involved in the education and manufacturing forums, if you have questions about being involved in Train the Trainer, interested in that, about what's going on with Manufacturing Week and the tours, etc., any of that type of stuff, call Dean. That's your best place to go.
We'll
Dean.
start there, and I'll
Start with
distribute
Dean over there,
accordingly.
yeah.
Right.
So back in October, North State Grow Manufacturing Initiative, which was up in the Chico area, they've done a good job of growing the educational community up there in terms
Correct.
of developing education for manufacturing. Basically what we're trying to do here.
Exactly.
So people became aware of that and said, hey, why don't you guys come down here to Sacramento and present to us what it is you've done, what's been successful. So they came down. We had a forum at the Sutter Club back in October. I got the opportunity to moderate that, and that's where we really, you guys put this
That was
on.
the genesis.
Yeah, that really said, people up there said, hey, this is fantastic what they're doing in Chico. We need to be doing this in Sacramento.
Correct.
And so from that sprung this.
Right.
So you guys started having meetings, etc. So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about how that
So,
formed.
Okay. So, as you said, back in October, we did hold a forum. We had about 50 manufacturers in the room, and the president of the North State Grow Manufacturing Initiative, Mr. Bill Gaines, who also owns a manufacturing company called Transfer Flow, made a very passionate presentation, as you recall, and really encouraged the attendees to form an association for the purpose of building a pipeline of qualified employees if they're going to remain competitive and meet the needs of the region's manufacturers and grow. And from his perspective, this can only be accomplished when the manufacturers inform and educate the educational institutions about their workforce needs. And out of that, we literally did a poll on site or a survey.
Yeah.
We actually did a written survey and asked everybody, what were your top issues? Do you think there's value? Would you be interested in participating? So out of that, there was overwhelming support. So we spent the next 4 months putting together the outline of a program and presentation to a group of about 80 people in February, which was primarily manufacturers, but we also had some educational institutions participating as well. And we really identified 4 primary areas that we needed to focus on, which was, as noted, education, workforce development, building a membership, bringing manufacturers together, and then business to business, which is really focused on trying to enhance the supplier and manufacturing connections between the region's manufacturers, so that the manufacturers don't have to go outside of this region to find a supplier. We have a lot of primary manufacturers, we have a lot of original equipment manufacturers, and we have a lot of job shops in this region.
Right.
And frequently, the businesses don't have time to identify those supplier networks, so that's a big part, of this region and the initiative.
So, so the SVMI, you guys, the group of you got met regularly,
Right.
and kind of ultimately decided to form this. And so you formed a 501c3 not-for-profit organization at this point, part of Valley Vision.
Yeah, so technically, Valley Vision is the 501c3,
Okay.
and we are nested under them. They are like our financial partner
Mhm.
that help us, with accepting, receiving monies, processing. They're also a really good economic development partner because they've done so much groundwork already through their work on the regional economic development strategy and the industry clusters and looking at the 21st century workforce needs, like I said, which included advanced manufacturing. So it's a very logical relationship for us and partnership, and one that is really bearing fruit. And I think both organizations are really happy with that relationship.
Oh, good. That's great. So you guys have formed this, and you've got things going. You're having some meetings, et cetera. So what has been the response out there in the manufacturing community?
First of all, everybody will acknowledge that there is an overwhelming need for a trained workforce. That there aren't enough students coming out of the schools these days. The logical progression is we need to engage with the educational institutions in the region to make sure that the employees that are coming out of those programs have the skills that we need.
Right.
So there's been a very positive response, I would say, from people. It's right now, a lot of it is, and thank you for today, it's about building awareness.
Sure.
And not knowing that there is a group out there of manufacturers, and this is a working group of manufacturers. Our goal is to build a best-in-class dynamic workforce that builds a skilled pipeline of workers that provides manufacturers access to a supplier's database, that a place where manufacturers can actually post job ads for incumbent workers. And if anybody has been to Glassdoor or indeed any of the online sites, you can pull up those ads constantly, and
Right.
you can really see that there's a need. It's about where do those people come from to fill those positions,
Right.
without stealing from each other.
Sure.
And it'll happen, but we're trying to build the base so that we can actually grow the manufacturing environment around here. But the other value here is advocacy, buy-in for manufacturing in the region, working with our partners, and access to a premium network for best practices and referrals. We have some amazing partners in the region through our workforce development boards like SETA and Golden Sierra and Yolo County, who can help us with the training initiatives for the incumbent workers, and also partnering with the educational institutions.
Right. So you've got a board of directors.
Correct.
It looks like it's only about a dozen people or so.
Right.
And most of them, well, a fair number of them anyway, are manufacturers.
Correct.
So you've got a number of manufacturers. You've got some service providers,
Right.
and then you've got some in the education space.
Right.
Yeah. So you've got a good mix there.
Right. And so our president is Kevin McGrew. He's quality assurance manager at Siemens, the light rail car manufacturer. Vice president is Joe Wernett of Tri-Tool out in Rancho Cordova.
Right.
Treasurer is Michelle Stofan from Garner Products up in Roseville. They're a small manufacturer. So as you can see, we go from the small manufacturer to the large manufacturer,
Siemens
and
stuff.
and Tri-Tool sits right in the middle there.
Sure.
So we're really trying to be representative of all manufacturers in the region, including food processing,
Right.
even maybe those that might be more in the medical device manufacturing arena. Like I said, the breweries, trying to run the spectrum to represent everybody.
Right. And you have a good full coverage.
Correct.
And so I think one of the questions that someone asked on Facebook was are you guys addressing, and I don't know if addressing is the right word, but taking into account somehow the fact that automation, could work people out of a job, right? The more, I remember years ago,
Right.
when I was with a bigger firm, we had Toyota as a client, and I remember going to a plant in
Fremont.
Well, no, I went to the one down, and it's the L down
Okay,
south of
down in Southern California.
Well,
Right.
it was south of Stockton. But
Okay.
anyway, there's like a guy sweeping
Right.
the factory floor, and that's it. Everything's automated, right? And so,
Correct.
so that unfortunately means there's not as many jobs as there obviously used to be. But I think there's still plenty of jobs even with automation. Someone's got to
Correct.
run the machines and all that type of stuff, right? So
Yeah.
program.
It does require, manufacturing in today's environment requires a skilled workforce, and if a company is to remain successful and relevant, automation is definitely a part of the process.
Absolutely.
And so training those employees with those skills for incumbent workers through ongoing training, as well as students coming up through the high school community college, is vital. I think the economy's at a place right now where we all have to become lifelong learners.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's the only way that
Yeah.
we can. I hate to use the term remain relevant,
But
but
true.
it's
Yeah.
in terms of
Applicable.
skills development. We have to be lifelong learners and be adaptable.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a break. We're listening to Beyond the Numbers. We'll be back in just a minute. All right. All right, so one more segment.
One more segment. Okay.
Anything in particular you want to touch on that we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I thought it might be interesting, just to kind of. So I've got just some little factoids about the manufacturing sector in the region.
Okay, good.
Just got some really interesting data. Just in terms of just raw numbers.
Yeah.
So they're almost what most people really don't realize in the 6-county region. 2,500 manufacturers that employ 44,000 people.
Right.
That has that generates annual sales of over $11 billion. Manufacturing has the highest. If you look across the spectrum of industries, and you're familiar with multipliers, the standard multiplier is about 2.5. So the money is respent 2.5 times.
Right.
So, manufacturing does have a large economic impact.
Huge.
It may be a small sector in this region. I think total employment is about 3.5%. What I found interesting when I learned this was LA, one third of the workforce is manufacturing.
Welcome back. You're listening to Beyond the Numbers on Money 105.5. Mark Bellows here, tax principal with Clifton Larson Allen, and my guest today, Dean Peckham, the executive director of Sacramento Valley Manufacturing Initiative. And again, if you have any questions about SVMI, if you want to get involved with them, if you're an educator and you're interested in some of their programs, if you're a manufacturer and you're interested in programs, if you just are interested, period, call Dean, 916-508-0892. Again, 916-508-0892. So, I want to mention that that the county supported by Sac Valley MI is Sacramento, Yolo, Sutter, Yuba, El Dorado, and Placer. So it's
Correct.
a 6-county region.
It's a 6-county region,
And
the
how big
standard
is-
MSA.
And so manufacturing, sometimes people think, well, there's not a lot of manufacturing because maybe they don't think of food processing or craft breweries or whatnot. But
Right.
But really, there's a fair amount of manufacturing in the 6-county region.
Yeah, first I would have to say thanks go out to our partners at the Los Rios Community College District. They've been a great supporter, and like I said, we want to work with community colleges and will continue to work with them. And so they've helped support us by providing some really good data out
Right.
there. So in the Sacramento region, almost 2,500 manufacturing related businesses, and that doesn't really even address the warehousing companies, maybe the suppliers in the region,
Mhm.
the service companies that are out there helping repair that equipment.
Sure.
So you've got 2,500 companies, you've got almost 44,000 employees in the region, generating sales of almost $12 billion. And, right now, Sacramento region, the unemployment rate is probably reaching pretty close to historic lows.
Yeah.
We have, as of February, unemployment rate in the region of 4.7%. That runs from, like 3.5% in Placer, which is always pretty low,
Right.
up to, I think, Sutter County, like most ag communities, their employment levels are pretty cyclical. So right now, their unemployment rate is almost 10%. So, basically there are, 44,000 manufacturing jobs out there.
Yeah.
And right now, manufacturing comprises about 3.5% of the total employment in the Sacramento region. It's really not that far out of the norm for the rest of California. But interestingly, Los Angeles, 1/3 of the workforce is actually involved in manufacturing. So, you can recognize, there's a large aerospace industry
sure.
out there, which has a great impact. But, they also have things like food and textiles as well.
mhm.
So, but we're trying to grow that manufacturing workforce, which provides some economic stability to the region so that we don't experience those cyclical highs and lows that we went through, historically.
Right. So as we continue to build up the workforce, it makes our area much more attractive.
Correct.
So
Correct.
I'm sure you guys are probably, or at least certainly manufacturing community and stuff has been involved with GSAC with Greater Sacramento,
Correct.
because GSAC's bringing business to Sacramento, and one of the draws, if you will, is having a good workforce. And so
Correct.
the more we work with educators building up the manufacturing workforce, the better suited we'll be to bring in more
Yes.
manufacturing and increase that 3.5%. I see more than increase to 44,000 jobs.
Right. And, in today's society, economy, when young people are looking at where they want to live, because a lot of times they're making those quality of life decisions.
Yep.
This only positions Sacramento better down the road
Yeah.
to attract that workforce to our community, as well as grow the incumbent workforce and create opportunities for the youth that are going through our high schools and elementary schools right now.
Right. So you guys have got the education and manufacturing forums coming up in May.
Correct.
Starting in May. Is there multiple forums, or is it going to be one? Multiple?
Let's see, we're going to be doing multiple forums. We're going to be participating in school district career technical education advisory boards, and actually meeting, in small groups with the school district administrators, as we noted.
Well, and you mentioned a number of high schools that have programs in place, and it was much higher than I thought. I thought it was maybe 4 or 6, and then your number is probably closer to 8 or something. So.
Yeah, closer to 8.
Yeah.
And I think, and if you look at it, I think the goal would be that each school district
Yeah.
had at least one manufacturing technology related program out there.
Yeah.
I know that, we've got Elk Grove Unified, which has its Career Technical Education Advisory Board meeting coming up next week, which we'll be participating in. So they have, like I said, Laguna Creek High School. Roseville High School has a CTE Advisory Board meeting coming up.
Right.
I think tomorrow is the Bella Vista Engineering Career Technical Education Advisory Board meeting, so we'll have manufacturers participating in that as well. So that's a big thrust, is building that awareness within the community.
Absolutely. So that's what the forums will help do. Continue.
Correct.
You've got the Train a Trainer coming up.
Correct.
Coming up this summer, so you're going to be taking some of those high school educators and training
Right.
them, and then of course the manufacturing week coming up in October.
Right,
A
and
lot of activities around that.
and there's a lot of focus around that, but from an organizational and from an awareness standpoint, it's important that we build those relationships with the schools so that they're ongoing. They're not just once a year, but they know who the manufacturers are, let's say, in their community. So, if Roseville High School needs to have a manufacturer come out and talk to their students, they have access to somebody already.
Right. So where does SVMI get their funding?
So funding is coming through, primarily through some startup support from the California Manufacturing Technology Center, which is located down in Torrance. They're part of the nationwide manufacturing extension partnership.
Okay.
You go up the chain of command, they're funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce.
So Mannix.
Yeah, so Mannix
Local
is their
Mannix,
local
yeah.
is their local partner.
Right.
And then we're getting support from our workforce development boards as well, U.S. Department of Labor,
Right.
and then through memberships.
Okay, and so memberships being manufacturers that are members? Is that
So we're looking at manufacturers as well as affiliates.
Okay.
So that could be the accountants, that could be
Yeah,
you.
sure. It will be.
It could be the financial institutions, et cetera, people who have a direct relationship with the manufacturers. And then we're also looking at bringing on, obviously, the education and the utilities, et cetera, as critical partners and members as well.
Sure. Again, if people are interested and want to get involved, the best way to get a hold of you is to call you, 916-508-0892.
Correct. And then, if they want to get involved, A, become involved, and B, become members, we can forward the membership contact information and get them engaged as quickly as possible.
Good. And so, I think, this is just, again, we started this, or you guys started this really in October.
Correct.
The genesis of it, and now we're in April, so what's that, 6 months have gone by, and you've gone a long way, right? You've got a lot done. I think there's really a lot of momentum behind this. So, have you been contacted by other communities outside of the 6-county region at this point?
Not at this point. There have been some discussions about expansion into Solano County because they're part of that regional food network as well. There's, probably more affinity to what happens in the Sacramento region, let's say, than what happens in the Bay Area.
Right. Have, I know that the one up in the North State, that one's been great success, phenomenally successful.
Right.
Are there other movements like that, like you guys are doing
Sure.
here, anywhere around?
Yeah, so there is a group an association down in San Diego. There is one in the San Joaquin Valley, which is out of Fresno. In fact, we're meeting with them later this morning.
Okay.
So their reach extends basically from Bakersfield, like up almost to Stockton, to Madera counties.
Right. Okay.
So, and then there is a group around San Joaquin, Stanislaus counties. There is a large organization that serves the Inland Empire as well as the Association of Bay Area Manufacturers. And I understand there's also, had conversation about a month ago, there's a nascent organization starting up in Silicon Valley.
Okay.
So, the networks are growing,
Yeah.
and the intent here is, and we've all had these soft conversations about how we really strengthen these regional partnerships so that we're all speaking from the same voice, so that when we're talking to the state of California or the Department of Education or the community college system,
Right.
they recognize that this is a unified voice representing manufacturers across the state.
Yeah, and a big issue with manufacturers across the state is lack of I want to say talent, but lack of employees, really. Lack of qualified
Well, it's a
employees.
qualified,
And
trained
it
workforce.
needs to start early, and that's why high schools are a great place to start. Dean, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mark.
it.
Appreciate
Dean
it so
Peckham,
much.
the Executive Director of Sac Valley Manufacturing Initiative. And if you want to get a hold of Dean, 916-508-0892. You can get a hold of me, 906-784-7800. You've been listening to me on the numbers. Take care. Have a good week. We'll talk to you next week.
Cool.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. This was wonderful.
Good.
You're a good host. Thank you.
Thanks.
I really appreciate that. I will admit I didn't sleep really well.